Hello, this is Shan Chandrasekar welcoming you to another delightful part of our programming. We have a very distinguished guest in the studio here with us today. He's one of the most popular lawyers in our community, and he has specialized in personal injury law. Award-winning lawyer, I should say, none other than Mr. Nainesh Kotak, who is a very familiar face in the community across this country. Nainesh, it's such a pleasure to have you in the program.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Nainesh, our hearty congratulations to you. You know, from what I understand, for 6 years in a row, you have won an award, I believe, in terms of your role and your function in your particular field in Mississauga. Tell me about these awards.
That's correct. So there's an award called the Top Choice Award, and it's voters vote online for what they consider the best personal injury lawyer for their various cities. And I've been winning for 6 years running in Mississauga.
You have a bachelor's degree from York University with an honors degree, I should say. And then after that, you went and got your law degree from Ottawa, from the university there. Now, since then, you've been practicing very successfully. Tell me about the field of specialization that you have done.
That's correct. Well, initially when I started practicing law, it was back in 1994, quite some time ago. And as a young lawyer, I came out and not really knowing what area of law I wanted to do. So I would experience all the different types of law, experience everything. So initially I practiced immigration law, I practiced some just general civil litigation, and then a lot of criminal law. And that criminal law experience gave me a lot of trial experience in front of juries. And getting around 1999 to 2000, I became more passionate about helping people who had been injured in accidents or who had been wronged by insurance companies. So really since 1999 to 2000, up until now, I've been exclusively practicing in the area of personal injury litigation. And this involves representing clients who have been injured in accidents, who have tripped and fell, slipped and fall due to snow and ice, for example. And I represent clients who have been denied disability benefits through various types of insurers, usually long-term disability claims. And we also help clients with Canada Pension Plan disability claims as well. Really anything that involves litigation with insurance companies.
It's interesting when I heard you speak now, you used the term slip and fall and trip and fall.
Yes.
So what's the difference between the two?
Right. Well, I guess it's just the physical action of how the incident happened. Slip and falls usually involved some sort of, for want of a better word, slippery surface on the ground. It could be due to ice, a spill, for example, in a grocery store, there might be a liquid on the ground, or a fruit spill that became liquid. So the foot action is an actual slip. And the trip you find often occurring due to uneven ground, for example, in parking lots, where someone's not slipping on something, their foot gets caught in some sort of unusual danger, and they fall and they get hurt. And we see in comedies, we see these slip and falls, trip and falls, and people, but it's not something that's very funny, quite frankly. The type of injuries people sustain when they fall can be quite horrific. You can have leg fractures, knee fractures, tibial fractures, and often very serious head injuries as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
In your practice, I'm sure you've come across many accident victims and you're helping them out.
Yes.
When an accident happens, it's an incredible crisis in one's life. So tell us about the significance of that, getting that professional legal advice.
Absolutely. So I'll go back to sort of the initial scenario that you presented. The accident might have happened, and they might be approached by the other driver. Well, let's walk away. I'll pay for your damage. But if they are hurt, often that pain becomes worse in the next couple of days or the next couple of weeks.
Right.
The best thing to do is follow the law.
Right.
Get the police involved. Go seek a medical professional if you need. And then if you're better, fine. And if you're not, then you obviously proceed with your claim. You've mentioned finding a quality legal representation, and this is very important. People deserve the right to good representation. The Insurance Act is a very complicated piece of legislation. There's many regulations to it. And I think it's very important for the person to go to a lawyer who understands the Insurance Act, who perhaps practices, if not exclusively, but mainly in the area of personal injury litigation, so that you're getting that qualified representation. And at the end of the day, if someone settles their case, they're doing it with the backing to know that they got the best settlement possible. Yeah.
Now, you've got some tough cases, and I've also heard that you've been very successful in getting really decent settlements and deserving settlements for the clients. Tell us about those.
You're absolutely right. You brought up that point that all the insurance companies are not the same.
Right.
And insurance companies they're not out to rip people off. They're there to make money and process claims judiciously as possible. They answer to their shareholders in terms of not paying out something that's undeserved.
Right.
At the same time, each insurance company tends to have its own, what I would call, culture to it.
Right.
Whether it's directives from above or not, some will like to deal with a claim more quickly, to assess that the longer we let it run, the more risk that may be involved, the more legal expenses they will incur. There are other insurance companies that have chosen to take in the room that, no, we are going to dispute most claims and make everybody prove each and every aspect of their case. I'm not going to mention which ones are like that and which fall into each category, but one cannot deny, in fact, that is true. That is absolutely the case.
You specialize in disability claims.
Yes. In terms of disability claims, there's often employees have what's called long-term disability benefits or short-term disability benefits as part of their employment contract.
Right.
And professionals who are self-employed may also buy into a plan. And it's a very good idea because if one becomes disabled, you're used to a certain standard of living and you want that to continue. What often happens is a person might be injured. They might have a heart attack, they might have arthritis, or it doesn't have to be accident related, and they can't work anymore. Mm-hmm. So then they look to apply under the disability contract that they were provided, whether it's through a private plan or through their employer. Often there's two definitions of disability under the policy. And it varies, but I'm giving the general sense of what most policies would say.
Sure.
And the first is, for the first 2 years, it's whether the person is disabled from performing the essential tasks of their pre-existing employment. Mm. After 2 years, often the test changes to whether or not the person is totally disabled from performing any gainful occupation to which they're suited by way of education, training, or experience. Mm-hmm. So the type of cases that I see, sometimes I have situations where they're just denied from the beginning. Mm-hmm. The insurance company says, well, we're not going to pay, we don't think there's enough medical evidence. And other times I see a situation where they paid for a certain period of time, the 2 years, and then the insurance company feels, well, we think you can do some light duties, mm-hmm. and we're going to terminate the benefit at the 2-year mark or even earlier. And the people who are disabled, often they become very distraught, mm-hmm. and they walk away. Mm-hmm. Or they try the internal dispute mechanism that the insurance company will write to them, well, you can appeal this decision if you send this letter in 30 days or some evidence in 30 days. Mm-hmm. Quite frankly, my experience is it ends up in continual denials and denials.
Mm-hmm. Is that like kind of an arbitration process?
Well, their internal dispute mechanism is really sending in more medical evidence, and then they make another decision, which inevitably, in my view, and from my experience of doing this for many years, will be a no again. Mm-hmm. And that's why I would suggest, and what I advise the people who come to me, mm-hmm. is, look, don't walk away from this. Right. If you are truly disabled and you cannot work, let's litigate with this insurance company. Right. They have their own process, but that's fine. Right. Let's go ahead and we sue the insurance company for breach of contract. Right. And we also sue for punitive damages and damages for bad faith.
Explain punitive damages to people.
All right. Punitive really means a punishment. Mm-hmm. So a court or a jury could look at the conduct of an insurance company in denying a claim if there was overwhelming evidence that the person was disabled, and the insurance company chose to deny it based on wrong information, biased information, and then protracted a litigation. And that protracting a litigation, the denial itself, affected the person in a significant way, maybe psychologically. So courts could look at this, and they have done this before on a number of occasions, that not only is the insurance company ordered to pay benefits that are owed to date, but there must be some sort of punishment for that type of conduct. I see. And extra damages, called punitive damages, are added to that as really a way of punishment.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've heard the term pain and suffering. Yes. What does that entail?
Right. Pain and suffering is what's called, it's a head of damages. It's a type of damage that is sued for. And it means the suffering the actual physical or mental, psychological suffering the person has endured, and also their loss of enjoyment of life. It compensates for intangibles such as social activities that they used to do and they can't do anymore, that change in their life. In the automobile situation, to get money for pain and suffering, one has to prove they have a serious and permanent impairment of an important bodily, mental, or psychological function. And this is what's called a threshold. And once you exceed that, once you meet that threshold, if you have medical evidence to show that you do meet that threshold, you can obtain damages or an award of money for pain and suffering.
We're doing a television special with dynamic young lawyer. There's more to come on the program. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. What would be the nature of clientele that you have? Where would you find most of your clients? What kind of problems do they come to you with?
Right. I find that pretty well all of my clients have some sort of insurance-related claim, whether it's been through an injury in a car accident, been denied benefits. We represent clients from all different ethnic groups. My office is in Mississauga. We're expanding into Brampton and other areas. So our clients are multi-ethnic in terms of where they're from, and our staff is as well.
Right.
So we help a lot of people out.
That's wonderful. Nainesh, I realize your legal profession especially, the principle of confidentiality is very important.
Yes.
So without disclosing any names, can you give us an example of one of the most difficult cases that you handled where you successfully won and you got a decent compensation to a victim that deserved it?
I can do that without mentioning names.
Sure.
I've had two clients on different occasions with the same fact scenario, and it's heart-wrenching. Both these individuals, separate accidents, and different years later, just happened to have the same situation. Truck driver driving. The car, the driver who's at fault, made an erroneous move, drove right in front of them, and my client couldn't stop.
Wow.
They're driving an 18-wheeler, and they couldn't stop. They end up striking the vehicle and killing the occupants of that vehicle and actually seeing them die. Now, there may be some physical injuries, but not that severe because they're in a truck. But the psychological trauma to the truck driver in both these cases was debilitating, where both individuals in the same situation wouldn't leave their home. I had to arrange for one, because the other one is still ongoing, but the other I had to arrange psychological treatment over the telephone, and we had to force the insurer to pay for this, to get them to understand how serious this is, because the person became suicidal. And we ended up with great settlement. For the one is ongoing, so I can't really talk about what's happening there, but the one that did end last year, we got an amazing settlement from both their own insurer and the other drivers in insurance. But it really brings home tragedy. You see that, where people have died in the car, and you have to sue the estate of that individual. And what I would do, because we're very compassionate, I would contact the insurance company. I don't want to serve this statement of claim on the family members. I'm going to serve it on you, the insurer. You deal with it. Let's keep them out of it, and let's just deal with this. But it shows you that there can be very serious psychological injuries in an accident for someone who has witnessed a fatality, for example. It was difficult because, we're all human beings, and you put yourself in that person's place. You put yourself in the place of the person who was actually killed in front of them. And in the recent case, there was a child and a father, and it's very it gets to you. But my role is to get the person the treatment fight for the treatment. So they get the psychological treatment. I did that in the one case, and we'll do it in this other case. And to get the person the compensation they deserve, because they're not going to go back to driving a truck. The trauma is too much. So these two cases are ones that really stand out in my mind. I've dealt with other fatalities as well. I've had a case where, unfortunately, a youth was racing, looked like they were racing, and they died, and we were able to get compensation there. Those are very difficult cases to deal with, because you're representing families, you're representing parents as well of people who are deceased. But I can only do what I can, which is try to ensure they get the right treatment possible, the medical treatment they need, and to get them the most compensation that they deserve. They'll never heal completely, but our job is to try to compensate them for their loss, in addition to try to get them the right treatment as well.
I realize that, especially in the case of death, there is no amount of money can be a real compensation.
Correct.
But just as a ballpark figure in terms of example,
yes,
what would be the kind of compensation figures that you would get under those circumstances?
Okay, so it depends on a number of factors. The first would be the age of the deceased, the person who died in the accident. And if they had any dependents, and what kind of income they were earning. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of compensation for minors because they don't have dependents. So the family members will be paid for what's called a loss of care, guidance, and companionship, which is not very significant at all, unfortunately. It's not and it doesn't mean that's the value of the life. It's just courts have really restricted what will be paid. And they're not paid for grief. They're paid for the loss of care, guidance, and companionship. There was a case a few years back, and it was from an ethnic community, where it was argued that the duty of the child would have been to look after the parents as they got older. So some award, some extra amount was paid because of that, and it only ended up something like $100,000 for the parents for loss of care, guidance, companionship, and it was a minor, but in a community where the minor would have been expected as they grew older to support the parents. There were other circumstances where I've had cases where the person is the breadwinner. So they could be just starting out their career, they might be in their 30s, they might have young children. So the compensation in that case is a percentage of the projected income that they would have earned up until retirement. So the spouse and the children are entitled to that, subject to some sort of mitigation in terms of if the spouse remarries pretty quickly and the financial need may not be as much there. So those would be high six figures. They're much more different. And again, the type of compensation that would make it greater is that economic loss, what that individual would have earned had they not been killed.
There's more to come on the program. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. You know, Canadian law is very much based on the British law, from what I understand.
Yes.
But with the changing nature of Canadian population, with the diversity that's now currently in this country, have you had, from time to time, have you had to fine-tune or tweak these legislative interpretations to suit cultural changes in the country? In other words, in the case of family law reform as an example, or taking care of children for that matter, many years ago, Children's Aid Society, what's considered abuse in one society could be considered discipline in another society.
Right.
Do you have similar problems when it comes to interpreting law and in compensation when you're dealing with disability or personal injury law claims? You know?
I think I see it in sort of the example I just gave, for example, with the fatality of a minor who in our culture, for example, would maybe have been expected to look after the parents.
In the countries where they were born, there is no RRSPs,
exactly.
There is no pension plans in place.
Exactly.
So there is an expectation on the part of the son to take care of their parents,
exactly.
or the daughter to look after her mother, things like that. So that's what you're referring to.
Exactly, and I've argued that, and I've been successful with that as well. To a certain extent, you push the boundaries to a certain extent.
Right.
But keep in mind that now the family lives here, so now they can contribute to RSPs and sort of adapt into the Canadian society as well.
Right.
But yes, there would be it might increase the compensation. Another example would be with respect to pain and suffering. I've had cases where, for example, going to the Gurudwara, People have to sit on the floor. And I've had clients with they were pedestrians and they were struck and they have leg injuries. So initially they can't go at all, and eventually they can go, but they go less. And that can be compensated for, because it affects their psychological well-being, it affects their loss of enjoyment of life. So in those circumstances, I've actually pushed for more money for pain and suffering because of their actual cultural needs as well. Yes.
That's fascinating. You were born in England, but you came here when you were very young, and you went to university here, and you've done very well for yourself.
Yes.
And your wife was born in Edmonton, and she's a very charming young lady.
Yes.
And her parents emigrated from India a long time ago.
Yes.
But in both your cases, you've gone beyond the call of duty, and you both have been very involved in community service and charitable activities.
That's correct.
So tell us about this, the social responsibilities that you've undertaken.
Absolutely. It is my personal belief that when one is successful in society, you should give back. It's almost like a karma duty, and it gives me such personal satisfaction to do so. Some of the recent things we have done, we've assisted the Peel Children's Society. We have made a donation to William Oster Foundation, and there's an organization called the Gatehouse, and it's actually located in Etobicoke, and it's not really well heard of, but they do such an amazing service. They provide a home, a shelter to children who have been sexually abused, women who have been sexually abused, and often it's the first place that the victim would go to with the police to get a statement in an environment that is non-threatening. It's nicer for children. And this is the cause that we've tried to help a lot. We have helped produce a video called the Gatehouse video that really, it shows an individual who has gone through experiences and really has progressed so well. What we tried to do for them, and what we did do, is we had a lot of volunteers, and it wasn't, I might have been the person who funded it and part of the ideas behind it, but it was not me. There's an organization called Just Doing It that was involved, and a lot of volunteers. They helped redecorate the place, paint it, and had an amazing evening, and it was sort of a winter theme where there was like a banquet outdoors for the organization. I have a box suite at the Brampton Beast. They're an ECHL hockey team just below the NHL. And I have a box suite there, and I try to donate that a lot to charities. And the first one we did, as I said, the Peel Children's Center. We're going to have children from the Gatehouse come out as well. We're going to have them drop the puck as well at the game. And I often use that for charitable purposes as well. And this, to me, is just, and it's my commitment, this is just the beginning. There's such, Shan, I know you guys do way more, and the things that you've told me you guys do, and I don't think I can reach that level, but I would, you're a great example for someone who's succeeded and who has really given back to society. And quite frankly, I would like to emulate that and do the same thing. Very
flattered, it's wonderful. It's very nice of you. First of all, I wanted to really wish you all the best. You've excelled in your career.
Thank you.
But you've gone beyond the call of duty, and you've recognized the importance of social responsibility. And you're doing an outstanding service to the community. Any help we can do for you in your community activities and the charitable activities that you're doing, we'll be happy to give you lots of media support and help you out as well.
Thank you.
Whatever we can do within our range is for the asking. Nainesh, I want to wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
And we'd love to have you back very, very soon. Keep up the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much.